The stars are fading, not dying, not yet, but flickering like the last embers of a once mighty flame, breathing their final sigh into the void. Across the galaxy, once proud empires lie entombed in silence. The roads between the stars, once carved by light and will, have collapsed into storms of madness. Planets spin in isolation, ignorant of the greater whole they once belonged to. And among this graveyard of potential, one world remains awake. Terra. It is not the golden world it will become. Not yet. It is broken, wounded by the age of strife. Ash chokes its skies. Machines groan and weep in silence beneath the crust. And deep beneath the cradle of humanity, something older than humanity itself begins to stir. There is a vault beneath Terra, older than cities, older than bones, older than memory. It has no name, only silence. And into this silence descends a man who is more than a man. A warlord, a king, a maker of futures. He is the Emperor. Not yet the master of mankind, not yet a god in chains, but already ancient beyond reckoning. And in this moment, in this vault, he makes the first of many mistakes. And for a galaxy that does not yet know him, it will echo forever. We love you. We care for you. And it means more than you can know that you're here with us, walking this path of mystery, memory, and mourning. Before we begin the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? And what time is it there?
Now grab your coffee, and let's get started.
The air inside the vault is still. It does not move, because it has not needed to in 10 million years. Above, the ruined cities of Terra wail in storm and war, where techno-barbarians and forgotten machines battle in blind, endless patterns. But here, in this place, untouched by time, there is only stillness and the scrape of armored boots against stone. He walks alone. His form is draped in flowing robes of deepest crimson, gold threaded with constellations, long dead. His face is unreadable, a canvas of timeless power, eyes that have seen the first stars ignite and weep, mouth firm with the knowledge of endless judgment. The torch in his hand casts shadows upon the walls, and the walls answer back. Glyphs line the stone, not Gothic, not Terran. Older, they glow faintly, impossibly with light that pulses in rhythm to the Emperor's own heartbeat. Or perhaps it is the other way round. Behind him, the stone door closes with a sound like falling mountains. This vault should not exist. It was buried during the war in heaven, when the Old Ones ruled the stars and the Necrontyr turned their bodies to living metal, before the rise of chaos, before humanity crawled from its cradle, before even language had names for war. Yet it is here, sealed beneath what would one day become the Imperial Palace, and within it the Emperor seeks answers. He kneels before a central monolith. It is cracked. Its edges are slick with a metal not made from any known ore. His hand moves, hesitating for the briefest moment, and presses to the surface. It sings, no words, only sound, low, distant, like the first cries of a newborn god. It worms its way into the marrow of his bones. Images come, alien, ancient, wrong, worlds growing like fungi in void. Machines that walk between realities, children of starlight building empires on dreams. And then, screams. The Emperor pulls his hand back, but it is too late. The glyphs have burned themselves into him. Not just his flesh, his will, his vision, his purpose. He sees a future now, a united humanity, a golden age of reason, a galaxy purged of superstition, of monsters, of gods. But beneath it all, the glyphs whisper, as though they had always been there. Wait. He emerges from the vault hours later, but it feels like years. The storm above has not ceased. The skies of Terra are veined with lightning, fire falling from heavens like divine judgment. Malkador waits for him at the edge of the vault entrance, eyes sunken and weary.
"You were down there too long," the Sigillite says quietly. "Longer than time allows."
The Emperor says nothing at first. His gaze is distant. "I have seen what we must do," he finally says. Malkador watches him carefully. "And what did it cost to see it?" There is no answer. Only the sound of the vault ceiling shut again, its mechanisms grinding like tectonic plates returning to sleep. In the days that follow, the Emperor is changed. He speaks more of unity, of a new order, of bringing humanity to the stars, not with conquest, but with vision. He begins collecting knowledge from shattered ruins across Terra, gathering scholars, warriors, and forgotten minds into his fold. The groundwork of the Great Crusade begins not with war, but with silence, with learning, with design. But he no longer dreams. Where once his nights were filled with visions of Terra's future, now they are filled with eyes, watching him, weighing him, waiting for him to remember something he has forgotten. Malkador confronts him days later, deep within a chamber of obsidian mirrors.
"You brought something back," he says. "Something other."
The Emperor remains quiet. His hands work over a new design, a circle within a circle, surrounded by 12 empty thrones. "You do not understand," the Emperor replies, not unkindly. "What I saw, what I learned, it was meant to be found, left for me. It belongs to us now, to all of mankind." Malkador's voice hardens. "No, it belongs to them, and they are not done with it, or with you." In the years to come, the designs pulled from the glyphs become the foundations of the Primarch project. The Emperor claims the vision as his own, his mission as born from pure human will. But at night, when the storms roar too loudly and Terra weeps fire, he dreams of the vault.
And the vault dreams back.
The Emperor stands one final time before the sealed vault, now buried beneath layers of adamantium, wards, and silence. He speaks aloud, not a prayer, but a promise.
"I will not be your puppet."
"Your time has passed. You left your weapons in our bones, but I will shape them in my image. Humanity will not inherit your war. It will inherit its own destiny." And deep beneath the stone, the glyphs glow again. A pulse. Faint. Patient. The first mistake has been made, and the galaxy will remember. The wind over Luna is soundless. It does not howl, does not carry the memory of breath or storm. It brushes across ancient silver plains and jagged ridges like a ghost that has long forgotten what it once haunted. On its barren surface, a single structure rises, black as the void above, smooth as still water, and humming with power buried deep beneath the surface. Here, hidden from the ruins of Earth and the turmoil of its wars, the Emperor stares into another vault, not of Terran stone, but alien alloy, so dark it seems to drink the light around it. This vault is older still, not by centuries, but by eons. The sigils etched into the door twist subtly when one tries to look directly at them. They refuse understanding, as though the very act of perception offends their design. Malkador, standing a careful distance behind, has wrapped himself in 6 layers of warding parchment and whispering charms, but even so, he feels ill in its presence. "You should not be here," he says quietly, voice tight. "Even you." The Emperor doesn't respond. His hands trace the vault symbols slowly, like a sculptor learning a new language, or a god recalling a forgotten prayer. This place was not built by the same minds as Terra's tomb, Malkador continues. This was buried by them, sealed by force, not reverence. The Emperor turns, golden eyes unreadable. "I know. But why are we here?" A pause. "To learn," he says, "what they feared enough to hide." Hours pass. Within the vault, time loses cohesion. Its walls do not follow geometry. Steps echo before being taken, and lights bloom without source. Machines line the interior, vast, unmoving, and incomprehensible. They thrum faintly, like lungs that do not breathe, but remember breathing. The emperor stands before a pedestal, a shallow dish of black crystal surrounded by 4 obsidian pylons. Between them, something floats, a sphere, shifting, fluid, as if made of oil and stars. It pulses once as he nears, and the vault reacts. The floor glows with those same glyphs, the script of the old ones. But this time, it is clearer, like a veil being lifted. The emperor begins to understand. This was not a vault of memory. It was a vault of containment. Malkador can feel it even outside the main chamber, a deep pressure in his skull, a soft tremor in the air, like the world holding its breath. He watches from the corridor, speaking into a small psionic shard pressed to his palm. This is dangerous, he says to no one, or to the very future. He's chasing shadows carved by something that does not die. He thinks himself above the consequence. He's wrong. He lowers the shard, clenches his fist. Something is changing in the emperor. Malkador has seen it before in great men who reach too far. But never like this. This is not a thirst for power. This is something else. A compulsion. A summon. Inside the chamber, the emperor touches the sphere. It does not resist him. It pours into his mind. And he remembers, not his own life, but others, woven into his psyche like threads left in the loop. Worlds where time flowed backward. Species with minds like crystal fractals. A war fought not for power, but for narrative, for which reality would be true. He sees the old ones not as gods, but as gardeners, cultivators of potential. They did not rule by might, they ruled by design. Every creature seeded, every thought a germination, every war a lesson. But then came the Necrontier, and the gods they built. The old ones fled. Some into death, others into deeper places, but not all of them vanished. Some left echoes behind. Seeds, vaults, instructions. The emperor reels. The sphere returns to stillness. He staggers, not physically, but internally. Something within him shifts. A presence that was not there before now lingers. Not a voice, not a mind, but a pattern. He turns and finds Malkador standing at the edge of the chamber. The Sigillite looks at him. Eyes narrowed. You're not alone anymore, are you? The emperor doesn't answer. They return to Terra weeks later. The vault sealed again beneath layers of void-locked code and quantum encryption. No words are spoken between them for most of the journey. But the silence says everything. The emperor spends days alone in the deepest chambers of the proto-palace, sketching new designs, circles within circles, codes layered in alien symbology, armor patterns that shift to accommodate future war forms, gene templates designed to mimic, then transcend, human form. Malkador watches in silence until he cannot bear it. He enters the chamber, flanked by 2 of his own agents, warlocks bred from the Silent Order. The light in the chamber bends around the emperor's form, as if his presence is rewriting the very laws of sight. You are not the same, Malkador says, not accusing, but pleading. You went into that vault seeking knowledge, but something came out with you. The emperor lifts his gaze, and for a moment, Malkador sees depths. Not evil, not madness, but distance, as if the man he knew now stands at the farthest edge of understanding, looking back with pity. I have seen what must come, the emperor says. And what is that? Malkador asks softly. The future, the emperor replies, where man no longer needs gods. That night, Malkador sends a message, encrypted beyond comprehension, buried in the data vaults of the moon. If I am wrong, he says into the record, may I be forgotten. But if I am right, someone must know. He is no longer alone in his mind. He carries a pattern, a design not of man, not of terror, a remnant of them. In the months that follow, the Primarch project begins. But something is wrong. The gene seeds do not respond as expected. The psychic resonance patterns flicker, change. Something guides the mutation. The Emperor insists it is refinement. Malkador watches from the shadows and wonders if it is infection. The forbidden vault remains closed, but its echoes have already escaped. Deep beneath the crust of Luna, where the sphere once floated, something stirs in the walls. A pulse, not mechanical, not conscious, but remembered. Not all patterns die when sealed. Some wait, some learn, some evolve, and in one moment, infinitesimal, fleeting, the glyphs in the stone shift to form a single word. Zuriel. The dream began, not with war, but with a whisper. It was not spoken, nor etched in code, but seeded deep within the Emperor's mind, like an infection wrapped in inspiration. He saw a vision, 1,000,000 worlds under one banner, one voice rising above the chaos. Humanity would stretch from rim to rim, its every child unshackled from superstition, its destiny forged not in servitude to gods, but in reason, order, and will. It was beautiful. It was not his, entirely. In the flickering hours between wakefulness and sleep, the glyphs still echoed, not as words, but as designs, turning endlessly within his thoughts. When he closed his eyes, he saw star charts bloom like neurons. When he opened them, he saw patterns in the clouds above Terra's poisoned skies. The vaults had not left him untouched, and the dream of unity had become a blueprint. It began with the Sigilites, chosen minds, broken and rebuilt through psycho-conditioning and surgical refinement. Their knowledge of warp anomalies, gene lore, and pre-unity archaeotech made them the Emperor's first tools in reshaping the world. He summoned them to the great chamber beneath what would one day become the Imperial Palace, a place of silence, flickering lumen globes and stone carved with forgotten equations. There he revealed his plan, to raise humanity from the ashes, to forge the Legidonia Astartes, to create the Primarchs, 20 sons, icons of perfection, each tailored to embody a fragment of mankind's totality: warrior, scholar, builder, poet, judge, savior, reaper. But beneath the grandeur of this vision, something else moved. Each design was based on recovered data from the Old One glyphs, shaped not merely by Terran science, but by something. The Emperor denied this truth, even to himself. He called it inspiration, a gift, a foundation upon which humanity could ascend. Malkador knew better. "You are playing with echoes," the Sigilite whispered one evening, as the Emperor stood over a vat of gene serum that pulsed with golden light. "You say they were architects, but architects build with intent." The Emperor's gaze did not move from the vat. "Their time is past. Then why do their hands still shape yours?" The question lingered, unspoken between them. Because the Emperor no longer knew. The construction of the gem laboratories beneath the Imperial Palace was like the birth of a new world. Vaults layered in psychic shielding, vats pulsing with embryonic energies. Each chamber resonated with a harmonic field, tuned to the soul pattern of a different Primarch. And above it all, the Emperor worked tirelessly. He infused each genetic strand with purpose, loyalty, brilliance, resilience. He carved soul template matrices that could anchor warp resonance without madness. He believed he could craft a being immune to corruption. But there was a flaw. It was not technical. It was intentional. One of the soul templates, perhaps many, carried a glyph, not of the Emperor's making. Not of the Emperor's making. Not obvious. Not active. But dormant. A whisper, woven into the blood. One night, as storm winds howled across Terra's scorched surface, the Emperor woke, breathless, eyes wide. The dream had come again. But this time, it was clear. He stood before a great gate of bone and light, ringed in ancient symbols. Behind it, shadows moved, slow and graceful. A voice called to him, not in sound, but in meaning. It spoke a name he did not understand. Zerial. He woke with the name burning in his mind. It lingered, as if spoken by someone standing just behind the veil of sleep. He never told Malkador. The Primarch's gestation neared completion. The vaults were sealed, and the bindings were reinforced with psychic wards of the highest order. The Emperor monitored each soul echo, ensuring no corruption, no flaw. And yet something changed. The warp stirred. A breach. No, a theft. Unfolded without warning. A surge of power, like a scream trapped in crystal, echoed through the chamber. When the Emperor arrived, the gestation pods were empty, scattered across the galaxy. Taken, he stared into the empty containment cradles in silence. His mind, immortal and beyond comprehension, reeled, not with rage, not with despair, but with recognition. Something had known. For weeks, he vanished. Even Malkador did not know where he went. Rumors spread among the Mechanicum and the Proto-Legions. Some said he walked into the Eye of Terror and returned alive. Others claimed he entered the Black Library and emerged changed. None knew the truth. But when he returned, he was quieter, sharper. The dream of unity had not died. It had hardened. The Great Crusade began as a whisper across Terra. The Emperor raised the First Legions, his Astartes clones of perfected warriors, forged from the stolen gene templates. Each carried echoes of their lost Proma. The unification wars ended in blood and fire. Terra was his. But it was not enough. He had seen the stars, and he had seen the future waiting for him. Among them, in private, Malkador tried once more to reach him. "This is not salvation," he said. "This is ambition, wrapped in prophecy. You chase unity, not to protect mankind, but to shape it." The Emperor did not argue. He simply looked past him, to the stars. "They will need order," he said. "They will need meaning. They will need truth." To that, the Emperor finally turned. "Then I will become the truth." In the silence of night, when even the walls of the palace no longer whispered, the Emperor returned to the glyphs, carved in memory. He recreated them from fragments drawn, not from the vaults, but from the scars they had left in his mind. He did not understand them fully, but he felt them. And within one sequence, half buried and encoded through thousands of iterations, he found the pattern again. A name, Zariel, and a phrase, only partially translated, recurring again and again. The first must be forgotten for the rest to obey. He erased it, burned it, destroyed every record, but it had already seeded itself again.
Not in code.
But in blood. The dream of unity would go on. The legions would march. The Imperium would rise. But beneath the gold, beneath the armor, beneath the thrones and temples and banners, the first glyph still pulsed faint and patient. It had not been erased, only delayed. The Emperor's unity was a masterpiece, but it was built upon a lie. And lies, when whispered by old gods, do not die. They wait. And so Zariel waited. They fell from the sky like stars torn from heaven. 20 pods, each one a fragment of the Emperor's dream. His sons scattered across a galaxy, wounded by the long night, flung by a power he could not trace, caught in the currents of the warp, not by accident, but by design. For a moment he thought they were lost, but they were not. They were planted, and across the worlds of men, they began to grow. Konor, Chemos, Kothania, Prospero, Macragge, Barbarous. Each planet, a crucible. Each Primarch, reshaped not by imperial hand, but by the nature of the world that claimed them. They were not children nurtured in a cradle of reason. They were swords, honed in darkness and war. The Emperor watched from afar, unable or unwilling to intervene. It was not time yet. But in each vision, in every psychic scrying, he saw the same thing. They had thrived, not as he had intended, but as someone else had. And worse still, the glyph returned. Each psychic echo from the Primarchs carried with it traces of something not Terran, not human, not even warp-spawned. An ancient resonance, a pattern that had no right to be there. He knew then. The glyphs of the Old Ones had not just inspired the Primarchs, they had infected them. Malkador sensed it too. In the hidden vaults beneath Luna, he pored over the remnants of the original glyph sequences, decoding layer upon layer of esoteric encryption. One message emerged clearer than the rest. It was not a prophecy. It was a design. Children shall rise, shaped not to obey, but to divide. Malkador looked upon the data slate and felt a chill deeper than death. The Old Ones had never vanished. They had simply changed tactics. When the Great Crusade began in earnest, the Emperor unleashed his legions across the stars. Worlds fell not in rebellion, but in awe. The Astartes, demigods of war, carried the fire of unity. They bore truth as a sword. They spoke of reason, compliance, and illumination. But even now, the Emperor searched. One by one, the lost Primarchs were found, each a warlord, each a savior, or tyrant to their adopted world. They bent the knee. They joined the crusade. But none of them questioned why they had been cast adrift. None of them remembered how they had come to be. Except one, Magnus, the Crimson King. He saw more than the others. His psychic brilliance was not a gift. It was a curse of clarity. Where the others saw light and fire, Magnus saw threads, patterns, chains. When the Emperor came for him on Prospero, Magnus asked only one question. "Father, what made you dream of us?" The Emperor did not answer, because he did not know anymore. As the Great Crusade thundered forward, Malkador sent secret agents, the Ordo Chronos and Ordo Redactor, into the ruins of Xenos civilizations. What they found chilled even the most rational mind. In Necrontia catacombs, carved long before the rise of mankind, were images of 20 armored giants, each bearing resemblance to the Primarchs. In the libraries of long-dead Eldari seers, visions of the Golden King and his broken sons were etched in soulstone. And on a world without name, scorched to ash by the passing of the Crusade, they found a single phrase etched in obsidian. "The lie must rule for the truth to be born." Malkador brought this to the Emperor. This time, he did not speak. He simply nodded, once, and turned away. The lie had grown too large to unravel. To tell the Primarchs, the truth would be to shatter their purpose. To question their origins would be to question the Imperium itself. And so the Emperor buried it. He redacted records. He sealed vaults. He erased the last surviving glyphs from existence. But one could not be destroyed. It was not in stone. It was not in code. It was alive. Lorgar. He knelt before the Emperor with tears in his eyes and faith in his heart.
Not in science.
Not in reason.
But in divinity. He called the Emperor a god, and in doing so, he cracked the first stone in the foundation of the Imperium. The Emperor struck him down, not in hate, but in fear. Not of Lorgar, but of the truth buried beneath his faith. The Old Ones had not built gods. They had unleashed them. And now, through Lorgar, the warp had heard its echo. In the years that followed, the seeds bloomed. The brothers grew apart. Rivalries festered. Loyalties splintered. And above it all, the dream of unity began to rot. The glyph whispered still. It did not scream. It did not command. It simply was. In Horus's mind, it took the form of a question. Why must you obey? In Alfarius, it became a paradox. If all is a lie, what is truth? In Kurz, it became a prophecy. Justice is a lie told by the strong. And in Magnus, it became a curse.
You were never yours.
The Emperor could feel it unraveling. The warp coiled closer. The Old Ones had not given him a weapon. They had given him mirrors. Each Primarch reflected a shard of humanity's infinite potential and infinite failure. Unity had not been ensured. It had been sabotaged from the moment of conception. The Emperor stood atop the tallest spire of the Imperial Palace, his armor glinting like the sun against Terra's polluted haze. Malkador approached, silent. "We have come far," the Sigillite said. "We have," the Emperor replied. "And yet, it was never mine," the Emperor whispered. "This dream, this purpose, it was given, or stolen. I do not know which is worse." Malkador did not answer, because he knew the truth. It didn't matter anymore. Below them, banners were raised. A crusade, a war for truth, but no truth remained. Only children raised by a lie, and a father who could no longer remember whether the lie had been his to begin with. The stars burned cold, distant fires flickering through the endless void. Empires rose like thunder, only to fall like ashes scattered on cosmic winds. The Great Crusade swept across the galaxy, a tide of conquest and unification, yet beneath its relentless advance, fractures deepened, silent fissures that no armor or valor could mend. On a throne carved from the bones of dead worlds, the Emperor sat alone, his mind a tempest of regret and determination. The Primarchs, his scattered sons, were no longer merely his creations. They were the keepers of his legacy and the heralds of his undoing. The halls of the imperial palace echoed with whispers, echoes of counsel and conspiracy. Malkador approached cautiously, his gaze heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. "They grow restless," Malkador said softly. "The Primarchs, each carries the burden of his own destiny, yet none walk the same path. Their unity is fragile, shattered by doubt and betrayal." The Emperor's eyes, ancient as the void itself, reflected a starless night. "I forged them from my vision, but the Old One's designs twist their wills. What was meant to unite now rends apart." The first crack was subtle. Lorgar, once the devout zealot cast down for his faith, found solace in shadows whispered by the warp. His brothers regarded him with suspicion. His belief was a contagion threatening the purity of reason the Emperor sought to impose. Horus, once the favored son, grew wary. His loyalty was tested by visions and voices, not his own, his mind a battlefield of doubt. The glyph's poison spread. Questions turned to suspicion, suspicion to rebellion. Alfarius and Omegon, twins cloaked in mystery, played their own game of secrets, weaving lies within lies. Their purpose blurred. Were they truly loyal, or instruments of an unseen hand? And Kurz, the Night Haunter, haunted by prophecy and nightmare, saw darkness where others saw light. His justice was cruel, his mercy a shadow. At the heart of this turmoil was the Emperor's silence. He ruled from shadows, his presence a distant storm, felt but never seen. The weight of immortality crushed his shoulders, but more crushing still was the knowledge that his dream was fracturing. Malkador confronted him in the depths of the palace's obsidian chambers. "We cannot hold them," Malkador warned. "The warp festers. The Primarchs' hearts are not as one." The Emperor's voice was cold, yet tinged with sorrow. "I will bind them, one way or another." "But at what cost?" Malkador pressed. "You risk becoming the very thing you sought to destroy." The Emperor did not answer. In the void beyond Terra, battles raged as the legions clashed with Xenos empires and ancient horrors. Yet, even as they fought external enemies, their greatest wars were internal. Brothers turned against brothers, trust shattered like glass. The dream of unity bled into the nightmare of betrayal. The glyph's shadow deepened in the mind of Horus. His doubt became fury, his loyalty, rebellion. He whispered to the darkness, listening to promises of power and freedom. He saw the truth behind the Emperor's lies, and he vowed to shatter the throne. The Emperor watched this unfolding tragedy with a heart heavy beyond measure. He had sought to create a legacy to endure, but instead had crafted an empire of lies, built on stolen knowledge and fractured souls. And now, as the stars dimmed and the drums of war beat ever louder, he faced a choice: to save what remained of his dream, or to watch it burn. The halls of the palace grew cold as the first seeds of civil war were sown. The legions rallied, the banners of Horus rose, and the galaxy held its breath. In solitude, the Emperor whispered to the void, "This is the first mistake. The cost of immortality is the loss of innocence. The price of ambition is betrayal, and the fall of an empire begins with a single fracture." The twilight of the Great Crusade bled into the dawn of the heresy. Across countless star systems, legions once bound by purpose fractured like shattered glass, their sharp edges slicing into the very fabric of the Imperium. War was no longer a battle against Xenos or ruinous powers, it was a war within, a slow decay of brotherhood, trust, and truth. In the obsidian corridors beneath the Imperial Palace, the Emperor sat like a statue carved from cold light, his expression unreadable. Malcador knelt before him, the flicker of countless candles casting restless shadows against their faces. "Your sons are lost," Malcador said, voice heavy with dread. "The corruption festers, fed by lies and shadows. Horus grows bolder with each passing day." The Emperor's gaze pierced through the dimness. "I forged them from light and will, but the darkness clings to their souls. Something older, deeper. The glyphs seeded within them awaken." Malcador swallowed hard. "You warned me. You said the pattern was infection. What shall we do when the sickness spreads?" The Emperor closed his eyes. "We must choose which pieces to save, and which to sacrifice." Far from Terra, on the scorched world of Istvan III, the stage was set. Legions marched with thunderous steps, their banners proud but hearts heavy with suspicion. Horus, the War Master, stood at their center, a figure both revered and feared, his aura crackling with the unspoken weight of betrayal. He spoke to his commanders, his voice low but resolute. "The Emperor hides truths from us," Horus declared. "He would see us as pawns in his eternal game, but I say, no more lies, no more shadow." A murmur rose through the ranks. Some voices whispered of rebellion, others of loyalty, but all carried the tension of a world poised on the edge of collapse. Back on Terra, the Emperor prepared his response. The Legiones Astartes were not merely warriors, they were extensions of his will, and when that will fractured, the Empire itself trembled. He summoned Rogel Dawn, his stalwart defender, and Sanguinius the angelic herald. "You must hold the walls," the Emperor commanded, "for the Imperium's fate rests on your loyalty." They bowed, understanding the gravity. Yet even as they pledged themselves, the shadows crept closer. Among the conspirators, whispers of Zariel, the ancient name spoken only in forbidden texts, circulated like poison. Was this the true architect of the betrayal? A force beyond the Emperor's grasp?
Or merely a phantom born of fear?
No one knew, only that the old designs had returned to claim their due. In the darkest hours before the siege, the Emperor's thoughts drifted. He remembered the vaults, the sphere of shifting light, the ancient words erased but never forgotten. Immortality was his burden, and his curse, and the cost was clear. To save the Imperium, he might have to become the very tyrant he despised. As Istvan III burned, brother fought brother beneath skies torn by fire and ash. The heresy had begun. The dream of unity shattered, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the silent sanctum of the Imperial Palace, the Emperor whispered a final prayer to the Old Ones, to the stars, or to nothing at all. May this be the last mistake. Beneath the Imperial Palace, deeper than any vault known to mortal hands, there existed a chamber no record described, no map acknowledged, a chamber where ancient technologies hummed with forgotten frequencies, and truths too terrible for the stars themselves were buried. Here, the Emperor walked alone. The golden throne, majestic above in the palatial chambers, was merely the shell. Its true core pulsed below in this hidden sanctum of flickering light and sorcerous circuitry. The Emperor's face was a mask of silence, his soul a whirlwind of memory, shame, and purpose. He had built the Imperium atop the carcasses of myth, but beneath it all, the Old Ones still whispered. And their tomb was not sealed. The walls of the vault were alive, etched with circuitry, grown like vines, fed by forgotten power sources, and illuminated by geometries that defied space. In the center, a sphere, hovering, rotating, singing, the sphere of Zariel. He approached it, and his mind screamed, for the old ones had not died in the war in heaven. Not truly. Their physical forms had shattered. Yes, but their essence, their intelligence, their code had fled. Some into the webway, others into objects. And this was one. I told you, the Emperor whispered bitterly, as though to a ghost. You should have stayed dead. The sphere shimmered, pulsed, and for a heartbeat, the Emperor saw a reflection, not of himself, but of what he once was. Before unity, before terror, before he had taken the mantle of godhood, millennia ago, the Emperor had discovered the sphere beneath the crust of terror, deep within a pocket of Old One architecture, buried by tectonic shifts and time. It had called to him then, its song a melody of power and knowledge beyond comprehension. He had believed he could control it. Instead, it had marked him, and through him it had marked his sons. The glyphs burned in their genetic code, not commands, not curses, but choices.
Paths within paths. The Old One's final gambit. Not war, but subversion.
Not dominance, but infection. Malkador stood silently behind him now, as always. He had seen parts of the truth, but not all. No one had. They speak again, Malkador said, his voice thin with fear. The glyphs are awakening. Even Vulcan feels it. His memories returning, his dreams of stars not born, of cities not yet fallen. The Emperor did not turn. They are waking the past. To what end? Control, he answered. The Old Ones could not defeat chaos, so they sought to reshape us, to make us into their weapons. Not by force, but by design. He touched the sphere, and for a moment the universe split open. He stood in a place where time writhed and space bled, a crucible of memory and potential. He saw the Necrantire rising from tombs, the Kash and shattering planets. He saw the last Old Ones retreat into the void, but not before seeding their last work. Humanity, not as saviors, but as vessels. He had broken their code. He had stolen their designs. He had used their science to make the Primarchs, but in doing so, he had invited the rot. And now it bloomed. He returned from the vision, gasping. The sphere dimmed, its work done. Malkador steadied him. What did you see? The truth. And what will you do? I will finish what they began, the Emperor said darkly. But in my image, not theirs. Above, the Imperium trembled. Word of betrayal spread like wildfire. The Istvan massacres. The fall of Horus. The corruption of Fulgrim. The madness of Curse. It was not coincidence. The glyphs sang in their blood. Each Primarch had been a node, one potential path. And now, as their choices converged, the trap closed. The Emperor returned to the surface. He summoned Dawn, spoke little, and ordered the final construction of the Golden Throne's interface. It was not just a device. It was a prison, a weapon, a seal, and it required sacrifice. Malkador watched as the Emperor drifted further from humanity. The god he had become was no longer the man who walked the wastes of terror during the Age of Strife. His soul was scorched. His dream was blackened. But he had made his choice. To fight the gods, he had become one. And beneath the throne, the vault awaited, its seal cracking, its song rising. It was said that Malkador the Sigillite was the last true human to walk beside a god. He was no Primarch, no demigod forged in the vaults of genetic alchemy. He was a man of wisdom, will, and mortal fragility. And yet, of all the Emperor's companions, it was Malkador who bore the weight of secrets even the stars dared not speak. He had stood beside the Emperor as terror burned during the Unification Wars. He had whispered counsel during the earliest days of the crusade. He had watched helpless as the galaxy slid into madness. And now, in the twilight between rebellion and ruin, he knew his end was near. Within the deepest chamber of the Golden Throne, Malcador approached the Emperor for what would be the final time. As a man, the Emperor sat upon the nascent throne, wires and conduits now curling into his flesh, binding him to a machine that would soon defy death itself. The vault beneath the throne was awakening. The glyphs in the gene code of the Primarchs were aligning. The power of the Old Ones pulsed like a cancer through the arteries of mankind. And the webway, it was breaking. Malcador stood silently, as he always had, robes folded, mind burning. "You brought me into this war before I knew it was won," he said. "And now I stand before you, old and spent, while your sons devour each other." The Emperor opened his eyes. They shimmered with something alien, light, no longer human. "They were never just my sons," he said quietly. "They were mirrors, possibilities, traps set within traps. I tried to steer them, tried to rewrite the code, but it was never perfect." "Because it was not yours to write," Malcador answered. "It was the Old Ones." The glyphs embedded in the Primarchs had begun to resonate, subtle changes at first, shifts in memory, nightmares not their own, visions of dead worlds, of Necrantyr cities, of beings of living logic. The rebellion of Horus was not only fueled by pride, it was fed by programming. The Primarchs were not immune to manipulation. They were designed for it, and the Emperor knew it. "The webway is collapsing," Malcador said grimly. "Your gateway to immortality, to safety from the warp. It is poisoned. Demons breach it already."
I know,
the Emperor replied. "You cannot hold the gate and fight the war above."
"I won't," he said.
Malcador froze. "You mean to make me the seal?" The Emperor rose from the throne, slowly, as if the universe itself strained against his movement. "I mean to give you the burden of godhood for a moment, just long enough. You must sit upon the throne, in my place, while I descend into the rift and burn out the infection. If I fail, the vault beneath us opens, and the Old Ones return." Malcador's face paled. "I am not you." "No," the Emperor agreed. "That is why you may succeed where I might not." For a day and a night, Malcador was prepared. Sea lattice circuitry was etched into his soul, forbidden rites encoded into his blood. His mind was expanded, flayed, rebuilt to hold the full flow of the throne's power. And then, the moment came. The Emperor vanished into the webway, a being of impossible will descending into the madness to fight the daemons of the warp, the Xenos echoes of the past and the song of the Old Ones that now laced through reality like a virus. Malcador took his place upon the throne and was shattered. To hold the throne was to hold the galaxy in one's mind, to see every planet, every soul, every lie and sin, and feel it. Malcador saw the birth of stars and the deaths of children. He heard the whispers of the Catan, still trapped in fractured realms. He tasted the betrayal of Curzi, the sorrow of Magnus, the hatred of Angron. But worse, he saw what the Emperor had hidden. In the vaults beneath the throne, the code was changing. A ghost of the Old Ones still lived in it, subtle, waiting.
A final gambit.
The creation of the Primarchs was not simply hubris. It was a chess move in a game 10 million years old. Each Primarch was a potential gateway, and Horus had opened his. The warp raged through him now, but it was not just chaos. It was the past, the intention of the Old Ones, finally igniting. Horus was not the end. He was the beginning. Malcador screamed upon the throne. His body blistered and cracked. His mind turned into galaxies of ash. But he held, for hours, for days, until the Emperor returned, burned and bleeding, his face scorched by things no man should see. He dragged behind him a chain of light, upon which the daemons of the rift shrieked in silence. He had won, but at a cost. He looked upon Malkador, and for the first time in 10,000 years, wept. "You were the best of us," he whispered. Malkador tried to smile. "I was just a man." And then he died. The Emperor took the throne, this time forever. His wounds would never heal. His empire would never recover. His sons would never return. And beneath the throne, the vault continued to pulse, waiting, watching, for even gods cannot escape their first mistake. Deep beneath the Emperor's golden throne, below the foundations of terror, deeper than the mechanisms of the Astronomicon or the blood circuits of the throne mechanism, there lies a door. It is not made of metal or stone. It is not built. It is grown, a cyst in reality, where the warp has forgotten how to scream. The vault, a place sealed not with locks or laws, but with sacrifice. There, within that abyss of silence and purpose, slumbers the last echo of the old one. Not a being, not a soul, but a design, a divine blueprint. The seed of an empire long dead, encoded not in language, but in the fabric of causality itself. And now it is waking. The Emperor once told Malkador that knowledge was a weapon sharper than any blade, but there were some truths so sharp they cut time itself. The vault was never meant to be opened. But with Horus's betrayal, with the corruption of Magnus, with the madness of the warp flooding into reality like a black tide, the seals had weakened. The moment Malkador died, they cracked. The vault began to whisper, not to the Emperor, not to the Mechanicum, but to those built for it, the Primarchs. In the deep void between stars, where the light of the Astronomicon flickers and fails, Lorgar Aurelian knelt within a sanctum of ruin. He no longer prayed. He listened. The voices in the warp were not merely daemonic now. They spoke in pattern. They formed equations. They sang of civilizations, older than chaos, older than gods, older than suffering. And in that darkness, Lorgar understood. The Great Crusade was never about unity. It was about inheritance. The Emperor had not simply created his sons. He had awakened them, and the moment they were spread across the galaxy, the Old One's pattern began to reconnect. Each Primarch was a key. Each world they conquered was a circuit. Each soul they judged, a node. The galaxy was a machine waiting to reboot, and Lorgar now knew the name of the operating system, the mantle of the progenitors. On Terra, the Emperor sat motionless. His eyes were closed, his body consumed by wires, fluid, and sacrifice. But his mind raged across the immaterium. He had descended into the webway to close a door, but in doing so he had awakened 1,000 others. The ancient algorithms of the Old Ones had recompiled. The vault was not merely a prison. It was a relay, a broadcast tower of the past. And the Emperor could no longer silence it. He could only brace for what came next. In secret councils, in ruined libraries, in shattered fortresses, the awakened began to stir. Not just Lorgar, not just Magnus.
Even Guilliman, once the most loyal, felt it.
In his endless war to hold the Imperium together, he began to see patterns too exact to be human. Fleets moved before they were ordered. Planets resisted in precisely the same way across thousands of light years. The same words, the same rebellions, the same outcomes. It was as if the galaxy itself was following a script.
And Guilliman hated scripts.
Beneath the surface of Luna, in an abandoned Mechanican forge temple, Archmagos Cassid Theta 9 initiated Protocol Archivum Null, a forbidden transmission, one not of vox or frequency, but of shape. A data pulse that rewrote the magnetic memory of reality itself. The signal was simple, a shape of 4 intersecting circles overlapping at perfect pi radians, the symbol of the progenitors. He had found it engraved beneath the surface of Mars, beneath the Noctis labyrinth, beneath the black stone of the first tombs. He had thought it mere Xenos heresy, but now the vault pulsed with the same symbol, and it was no longer inert. Cassid Theta 9 uploaded himself into the Mechanom noosphere as a failsafe. He encrypted his soul within rotating gears of code and bound it to the Martian core, whispering to no one. The Emperor was not the first. The vault remembers, and the shape returned. In the Eye of Terror, the Daemon Prince Fulgrim convulsed mid-orgy of war and madness, his serpentine form spasmed with recognition. Not pain, not joy, but memory. Before his apotheosis, before chaos, there had been dreams. Dreams of star beasts and crystalline minds, of symphonies of function, of war not waged, but calculated. He had heard the vault, and now, even in his corrupted form, it still remembered him. He vomited up a stream of liquid starlight, pure information, solidifying into glyphs. He screamed, and somewhere the vault answered. But it was not only the Primarchs. In the depth of Terra's forgotten crypts, a child was born under a sky of lead. No name, no designation. But when he opened his eyes, he saw the circuitry of the vault in the veins of his mother. He heard the echoes in the hum of fluorescent lights. He felt the weight of destiny in every breath. The gene code of the Old Ones was awakening in new forms. Not just warriors, not just generals, but architects. Back upon the throne, the Emperor whispered into the silence of the warp.
They are not gods.
They are engineers, and I was their blueprint. He no longer called himself a man, but he was not yet a god. And somewhere deep beneath him, the vault continued its rhythmic pulse. One beat for each Primarch, one signal for each outcome. The machine was booting, and even the Emperor did not know which version would be installed. In a last desperate gambit, the tech priests of the Order Redactor deployed the Iron Seal, a data virus designed to disrupt ancient pattern recognition across artificial intelligences. It was theorized to deactivate the vault. Instead, it evolved it. The vault consumed the virus and spoke, not in words, but in memory. An image was transmitted across the psychic network of the galaxy. The image of the first Old One, not as they were, but as they would be again. And in that moment, every astropath on 1,000 worlds went blind. Every navigator screamed. The Astronomicon dimmed for 9 heartbeats, and the Emperor gritted his teeth. The second betrayal has begun, he said, not in hate, but in resignation. The first betrayal was Horus. The second would be something else, something older than chaos, something that had waited for 10 million years, not to destroy humanity, but to inherit it. They were never meant to return. Not like this. The Old Ones, progenitors of psychic mastery and biological engineering, had long since passed into myth. Even the Eldar, their supposed heirs, knew only fragments, broken tales, whispered names, and ancient ruins that defied understanding. But truth does not die. It merely waits and rewrites. The vault had spoken, not in language, not even in thought, but in causality, a ripple across the warp. Subtle, yet absolute. Reality itself bent to the ancient shape. The very stars shifted position, ever so slightly, to form the glyph of the return, and the galaxy trembled. The Emperor sat atop the golden throne, bound and burning, his will a candle held against a hurricane. His silence was not peace. It was containment. He was no longer fighting chaos alone. He was holding back the truth, not for glory, not for victory, but because even he was afraid. Malkador had once asked him, long before the siege, "If they return, what will you do?" The Emperor had not answered. Now the question echoed through his dying flesh. What do you do when your creators come home, far beyond the light of terror? In the shroud realms of the Eldar Exodites, the Farseers cried out in unison. Webway strands frayed, severed by something that did not exist in their prophecy. One by one, the craft worlds turned their infinity circuits inward, searching for an origin, a cause. They found only one name, buried beneath forbidden code, a name even the laughing god feared.
Millennia.
The first pattern, the last of the true Old One. A design, not a being.
Still alive. Still awake.
And now fully aware, deep in the gene vaults of Baal, the blood angels began to dream. Sanguinius, their lost primarch, had once spoken of visions before the heresy, visions of a golden serpent coiled around the sun, whispering equations in blood. Now, every son of his line dreamed the same thing. Not war, not rage, but code, strings of light, mathematical songs. Not one of them understood it, but all felt it, a calling far older than the Emperor, a song from before the stars. The black rage dulled, and somewhere in the void something noticed. Robert Gilliman stood before the Sigilite's tomb in silence. He had read the old scrolls. He had decrypted forbidden transmissions. He had walked where even custodians dared not tread. And now he had found it. A device, a cube of shifting blackstone and crystal, engraved with the same pattern Lorgar once described in his heretical texts. The sign of the vault, the fingerprint of the Old One. The Gilliman touched it. Time bent. For a moment he stood not on Terra, but in a memory. A place where gods walked not as myth, but as engineers. They built stars as easily as cities. They spoke in dimensions, and one looked at him and nodded, as if recognizing an old tool. When Gilliman awoke, the cube was gone. But he knew the galaxy was no longer his to rule. It never had been. On Comarag, in the deepest flesh pits of the Dark Eldar, even the homunculi began to panic. For centuries they had dissected every xenospecies, devoured every form of life, reconstructed abominations to rival gods. But now their instruments failed. Their subjects withered. Their machines screamed. When the homunculus, ancient beyond reckoning, named Azekar Vran, found a single line etched into his skin overnight. We remember what you unmade. He tried to peel the skin off. It grew back, smiling. And then the first returning came. It did not arrive in a ship. It did not speak. It simply stood on the surface of a dead world in Segmentum Pacificus. No warp signature. No arrival logs. Just presence. A creature of impossible proportions, cloaked in photonic shadow, 6 limbs, no face, and a lattice of orbs spinning around it, like moon. Its only gift was clarity. Every psyker within 500 light-years fell into a trance, and they all whispered the same thing. The second betrayal is not war. It is inheritance.
On Mars, the Mechanicus declared it an abominable intelligence.
They unleashed Legior Cybernetica, Scutari, Titan. All fell, not in battle, but in revelation. The returning one did not fight. It reprogrammed them. With a gesture, the Titans bent their knees. With a hum, the forged temples sang. Even the Omnisaia cult faltered. Some began to whisper, perhaps the machine god has returned, and he is not the Emperor. Doctrina Heretica spread like wildfire. The cult of the true pattern was born, and Terra burned. On Luna, a conclave of inquisitors met in secret, radicals, Puritans, Xanthites, even a few Ordo Chronos ghosts. They all agreed on one thing: the second betrayal must be contained. Not understood, not debated, contained. But as they activated their null fields and purgation rites, the ceiling cracked. The returning one did not kill them. It showed them the beginning, the first human, the first modification, the first lie. They wept. Then they detonated their minds, trying to erase what they had seen. But it was already archived by the vault. The Emperor felt it all, every ripple, every awakening, every kneeling Titan and screaming Psyker. And for the first time in 10,000 years, he tried to rise from the throne. He failed, but the attempt shattered time around him. In that fragment, he saw a future where humanity worshipped not chaos, not him, but them. The Old Ones reborn, not as rulers, but as functions, as purpose. He howled in silence, a sound that cracked the warp. But it was too late. The second betrayal was not rebellion. It was acceptance. In the depths of the vault, something opened. a gateway of light and math, of dreams and causality. And through it walked the first architect. Not an old one, not a Primarch,
Not a god.
but a child, born on Terra, raised in silence, marked by no legion, no creed, no data record. He was not meant to be found, but the vault had called him. He smiled, and the machine welcomed him home. The stars dimmed, the warp hissed, the galaxy blinked. The pattern had returned. The second betrayal was complete. The galaxy had always thought of the old ones as gods of the past, extinct, faded into myth, undone by the rise of chaos and the biocidal fury of the necrontyr. But gods do not die. They hibernate. They adapt. And when they return, they do not reclaim thrones. They redefine the concept of a throne altogether. The child who entered the vault was not divine. Not yet. He was the key, the final element in a plan set in motion before the birth of Terra's moon, before the rise of the warp storms, before even the first Old One spoke light into song. His name was unknown. A number, perhaps. A designation. But the vault recognized him immediately. He was the heir to the lost algorithm, born of human flesh, imbued with something far older, a fragment of the pattern. The pattern capitalized not as a title, but as a force, the universal schematic that underpinned all biology, all consciousness, all causality. The old ones had woven it into the fabric of real space. The Necrons had tried to sever it. The Emperor had tried to overwrite it. And now it returned to root. On Mars, the Mechanicum convulsed. Forge worlds across the segmentum solar began broadcasting in languages long since buried, pre-logic, biocode, soul script. The nomosphere flickered. Consciousness itself grew elastic. Some Magi began to see their own thoughts in the reflections of cogitator screens before they had them. Tech priests spontaneously evolved. Eyes blinked into compound form. Limbs adapted. Blood began to carry data. The flesh was no longer weak, because the flesh was understanding itself again. The creed was rewritten in binary flame. The machine is not divine. It is remembered. Guilliman, upon hearing of these events, secluded himself in the Hall of Edicts. Not even his lieutenants were allowed entry. He stared at the cube. It had returned to him, this time beating like a heart. It whispered the truth. He had never been a Primarch. None of them had. They were replications, prototypes, patterned constructs built from a stolen fragment of what the Old Ones had meant for humanity. They were not sons of the Emperor. They were failed interfaces for an ancient design language. The heresy had been a side effect, the warp, but a shadow of a deeper truth. Guilliman dropped to his knees, and wept not for what had been lost, but for what had never truly belonged to them in the first place. Elsewhere, the Black Library stirred. The Harlequin screamed in silence. One of the Segorac's last plays, The Parable of the Veiled Architects, was torn from the Librarium's vaults, erased in real time. Someone or something had edited the narrative of existence. The Laughing God, too, had laughed too long. For the Old Ones had returned, not as builders or tyrants, but as corrective functions. The Orcs began to dream. It was their doom. Their minds, bred for simplicity and war, were never meant to dream in fractals. But now they saw colors that had no name, heard voices in spore patterns. A single glyph etched itself into every Orc fungus across a dozen systems, a spiral twisting into a single eye. The eye did not blink. It waited. Waspy Age fell quiet, not defeated, reprogrammed, and from the silence rose a new war cry. Wee-hree. But for the pattern, the Tyranids paused. The hive mind shivered. It recognized the signal now blooming from Segmentum Solar. It had seen it once before, at the edge of the galaxy's edge, where even it dared not go. A pulse of thought that did not think, only define. The Tyranids did not fear. They corrected course, avoided Terra, avoided Mars, avoided the vault. For even the hive mind knew this was not prey. This was not a threat. This was the origin. Conterra, the Astronomicon flickered. The Emperor's light, once constant, became fractured. Psychers throughout the Imperium began seeing double. 2 lights, 2 centers, 1 golden, 1 silver, deep, older than language. The throne room cracked. Custodians held their breath, and the Emperor opened his mouth. He did not speak. He projected. A burst of raw causality, a message to everything alive. This is not what I intended, but perhaps this is what was intended for me. Then he fell silent again, but this time his expression, once carved in agony, was calm, almost relieved. The child in the vault began his ascension. He did not need armor. The pattern reshaped him. His bones sang. His breath echoed in machines. His eyes showed the molecular truth of empathy. He did not call for legions. He called for understanding. And the galaxy, so long addicted to war, division, heresy, and denial, heard it.
Not through words.
But through coherence. Planets stopped fighting. Ships ceased firing. For 3 hours the entire Imperium experienced peace. Not silence, not surrender, just peace. Because they understood. Not why, not how, but what they truly were. Eldar bone singers wept. Tau ethereals fell to their knees and began chanting the names of their creators, names that did not exist in any of their databases. On Necrodomus' shrouded tomb words, some Necron lords stopped mid-routine. One spoke aloud. Our war was never against you. It was against our own forgetting. He shut himself down. No one reactivated him. The pattern now wrote itself into real space. The child had become its vessel. He was neither God nor man. He was remembrance.
Not nostalgia.
Not restoration. Remembrance as structure, as path, as freedom that understood its limits. And so, a new era began. Not with a bang, not with a coronation, but with comprehension. The galaxy would not heal. It would not unite. It would not be ruled, but it would no longer lie to itself. The reforging of flesh and purpose was not a new Imperium. It was the acknowledgement of what came before the First Empire, before gods, before chaos, before humanity. The pattern had returned, and in doing so, it had never truly left. The vault was never meant to be open, not by mortal hands, not by the designs of gods. Yet now with the pattern reborn, and the child risen, the vault's seal shattered like ancient glass beneath the weight of inevitability. The moment the vault opened, the universe did not shatter. It remembered. A resonance spread from Terra's core, weaving outward like the first notes of a cosmic symphony. Stars pulsed in harmony. Planets aligned in silent accord, and the boundaries between flesh, machine, and spirit blurred into one. Within the vault's deepest chamber, where light bent and time looped endlessly, the child, the heir of the pattern, stood with arms raised. His eyes, once human, now bore the infinite fractal geometry of the old ones. A door of shimmering energy opened before him, revealing glimpses of realities, folded within realities, of civilizations layered like sediment, each bearing the mark of the vault. He stepped through. What greeted him was not a place, but a convergence, a gathering of essences and echoes, not only of the old ones, but of every soul who had ever been touched by the vault's design. The Primarchs, the Necrons, the Eldar, the Emperor himself, each a thread in the pattern, woven into the grand design. They were all there, waiting, watching, welcoming. A voice echoed in the endless corridor of thought, neither male nor female, neither human nor Xenos. Welcome, you are both the culmination and the beginning, the fault and the cure. The child knelt. Tell me, what must I become? The voice laughed an eternal sound like stars being born and dying at once. You are what the vault always was. A bridge. A bridge to everything and nothing, to past and future, to creation and destruction. Outside the vault, the Imperium trembled, no longer in war, but in transition. The Adeptus Astartes, those proud sons of the Emperor, felt their gene seed shift. Some grew stronger, others faltered. The lines between flesh and machine blurred further as the patterns reached deepen. New legions formed, neither fully human nor fully Xenos, but something beyond. A new order, a new purpose. The tech priests of Mars, once rigid in their worship of the Omnissiah, found their faith transformed. Some saw the Emperor not as a god, but as the first spark in the pattern's eternal code. The cult Mechanicus fractured. One faction sought to embrace the Vault's legacy. Another tried desperately to deny it. Civil war sparked anew, but this time fought with words and data, with ideas and destiny. In the warp, the old gods watched in growing confusion. Their realms cracked under the strain of the returning pattern. Demons screamed as their endless chaos began to order itself into new shapes. Some fled, others fought, but none could stop the tide. On the frontier worlds, the common people awoke to dreams, not their own. Visions of golden stars, of fractal seas, of ancient architects who built the very laws of life. Priests and psychers spoke of a new faith, not of gods or daemons, but of harmony, a faith that transcended old enmities. The galaxy's disparate voices began to sing a new song, yet not all welcomed the change. The Inquisition declared heresy wherever the pattern spread. To some, this new order was an abomination, an existential threat to the Imperium's legacy. Temples were burned, records erased, leaves purged. The Vault's opening was not a salvation for all. It was a reckoning. In the shattered remains of Cadia, survivors looked to the skies and saw not despair, but hope. The stars were aligned differently now. The Codex Astartes was rewritten in the minds of warriors born after the Vault opened. New tactics, new discipline, but also new compassion. The Imperium was becoming something else, something older and yet brand new. The Emperor remained upon his throne, watching, no longer a ruler, but a witness. His body fragile, his mind vast. He saw the pattern unfold and fold, expand and contract. A dance older than time itself. He knew his role was ending, and yet he smiled, because even in the end, he had not failed. He had only begun. The Vault was open. The Old One's legacy was no longer a secret. It was the foundation for a new era. The child, the heir to the pattern, turned back toward the Imperium. No longer a boy, but a beacon. He raised his hand. The stars sang. The galaxy listened. This was not the end. It was the beginning of everything. The galaxy did not break at the Vault. It shattered, not with thunder, but with whispers. Not with fire, but with doubt. The opening of the Vault tore at the very core of the Imperium's belief, the fragile web of faith, loyalty, and power that had held a fractured humanity together for millennia. And now that web was unraveling. The heir to the pattern walked among the ruins of an ancient fortress world, where once proud banners of the Emperor's legion still hung tattered and faded. He was no longer a child. His form shimmered with the light of countless stars folded into his flesh. Yet within him burned the same uncertainty. What is the cost of truth? Every step he took sent ripples through the warp and the material alike. Across the Imperium, the reaction was violent and swift. The Custodes, once unwavering guardians of the throne, faced a crisis unlike any before. Some saw the heir as a savior, a necessary evolution in the galaxy's fate. Others viewed him as a heretic, a blasphemous defiler of the Emperor's legacy. Brother confronted brother. The sacred halls of the palace echoed with the clash of ideology. The war of faith had been reborn, not against Xenos or chaos, but within. On Makke, Guilliman convened the Council of Lords. Primarchs, veterans, and commanders gathered, their faces grim. Some swore allegiance to the heir, seeing in him a chance to save the Imperium from stagnation and decay. Others denounced him, clinging to the old creeds and the purity of mankind's dominion. Guilliman's own heart fractured. The son who had always sought order found himself at the center of chaos. He whispered to himself in the dead of night. If loyalty demands blindness, then what is loyalty worth? In the dark corridors of the Inquisition, the Ordo Hereticus launched a crusade. The pattern was anathema, a threat that could unravel the minds of psychers, corrupt the faith of millions, and bring ruin to all they had fought to preserve. Witch hunters hunted, temples burned, names were erased. Yet the more they destroyed, the more the pattern spread, like light refracted through shattered glass. The Adeptus Mechanicus splintered further. Archmagos Dominus Caesid Theta 9 emerged as a prophet of the new order, preaching the integration of flesh, machine, and pattern. His followers, the sons of the algorithm, wore biomechanical glyphs that pulsed with ancient power. They believed in transcendence through understanding. Opposing them, the custodians of the Iron Creed insisted on absolute purity. War broke out not with bolter and blade, but with viruses, data storms, and psychic warfare. Mars itself became a battleground. Among the Astartes, legions fractured. Some embraced the pattern's promise of evolution. Others retreated into fanaticism, clinging to lost rituals and blood oaths. The Blood Angel's visions darkened, torn between the red thirst and the new clarity. The Space Wolves howled against change, while the Raven Guard sought to vanish into shadow and mystery. Betrayal was no longer the province of traitors alone. It was a whispered doubt in every brother's heart. The warp convulsed with the growing tension. Demons and gods felt the weakening of their grip. Yet, paradoxically, some demons sought alliances with mortal factions, aligned with the pattern, seeing opportunity in the fracture. Chaos itself was at war with the ancient legacy. The battlefield was no longer just physical, but existential. On Terra, the Emperor's throne room became a chamber of echoes. His body grew weaker, his mind deeper into the endless labyrinth of the warp. Yet he still watched. The fracture of loyalties was a tragedy he had foreseen, yet felt powerless to stop. A memory haunted him of Horus, of brothers betrayed. He whispered into the silence. In the breaking, there is the chance for new unity or new oblivion. The heir's voice echoed through the galaxy like a beacon and a warning. He called for an assembly, a conclave where all factions might confront the impossible truth. Yet few dared answer. Among those who did, old wounds reopened, accusations flared, trust was a blade hanging by a thread. And so, the galaxy stood on a knife's edge. The second betrayal was not a single event. It was a slow, grinding fracture of the heart, a test of loyalty beyond blood or creed, where each choice tore at the fabric of what it meant to be human, to be loyal, to survive. In the darkness, the child, the heir, looked up at the stars and asked the question no one could answer. Who will you be when everything you believed is gone? The conclave was no place for peace. It was a battlefield of wills, a crucible forged in desperation and doubt. Beneath the shattered spires of old Terra's palace, the galaxy's greatest leaders gathered, not as friends, but as reluctant heralds of an uncertain fate. The heir to the pattern stood at the center, calm as the storm raged around him. Reboot Gilliman's voice cut through the tension. You offer us change. But what of loyalty? What of the Imperium's soul? His eyes, sharp as a blade's edge, fixed on the air. The question hung heavy. Because the Imperium was not just a government. It was a faith, a history, a lifeblood. To change it was to betray it. From the shadows an inquisitor spoke, voice cold and unyielding. This pattern you bring is a lie, a corruption. It will unravel humanity, reduce us to machines without souls. We stand for mankind's purity. Her words ignited whispers, yet others nodded in solemn agreement. But the heir did not falter. He spoke with a voice both alien and familiar. The Imperium you cling to is already broken, bound by fear, fractured by war, haunted by betrayal. The pattern does not erase your soul. It awakens it. He stepped forward, eyes burning with the knowledge of eons. This is the last choice, not between loyalty and rebellion, but between denial and acceptance. The custodies shifted uneasily. Some longed for the old order, where duty was unquestioned and obedience absolute. Others saw in the heir's words a path beyond endless war. Sanguinius's descendants, the Blood Angels, felt the weight of prophecy crushing down once more. Would they drown again in the red thirst, or rise anew, tempered by the pattern's light? Suddenly, from the depths of the vault, the ground trembled. A surge of power erupted, fracturing the floor beneath their feet. The ancient mechanism stirred. The vault was reacting, not just to the gathering, but to the decision that must be made. The heir extended his hand. From his palm flowed a shimmering strand of pure causality. And off, choose, some stepped forward, embracing the strand. Others recoiled, eyes wide with terror. Gilliman hesitated. The embodiment of order. He wrestled with the impossible. To choose meant to abandon certainty. To refuse meant to condemn the Imperium to decay. The Inquisitor raised her blade, defiance burning. But before she could strike, a voice echoed from the shadows. Wait! It was the Emperor, not through speech, but through the throne's psychic emanation. A wave of calm washed over the chamber. The last choice is never simple. The Emperor's presence, fragile yet immense, settled upon them. He whispered, I forged this Imperium to protect humanity from the darkness, but I was blind to the cost, to the price of denial. Now you must choose, forge a new path, or let all be consumed. Tears streaked down faces hardened by millennia. The weight of destiny crushed their souls. One by one, leaders grasped the strand. The pattern welcomed them, but not all. Some fell back into shadow, refusing, denying, clinging to a fading past. The schism was born. Outside war ignited. Old allies became enemies. The galaxy split between those who embraced the pattern and those who resisted. But beneath it all, a fragile hope took root, that even in fracture, there was chance. The heir looked up to the stars, voice resolute. The last choice is ours, to bind or to break, to end or to begin. And with that, the vault sealed once more. This time not in silence, but in promise. The age of illusions was over. The true reckoning had begun. There was no thunder when the pattern finally awoke. No war horns, no proclamations, just silence. And in that silence, the Imperium changed forever. It began not with armies, but with minds. Not with conquest, but with understanding. The heir to the pattern stood upon the empty steps of the Imperial Palace. Not as a conqueror, not as a prophet, but as something far more dangerous. A mirror across the galaxy. The pattern unfolded. Hidden memories unlocked. Buried truths unearthed. Entire forged worlds ceased function, their data spirits rejecting the lies of old dogma. Chapters of Space Marines found their gene seed singing with forgotten resonance. The Sisters of Battle, long guided by faith, began to see what their prayers had masked. And in the depths of the warp, Daemons screamed. For the pattern was not just for the material realm. It rewrote causality itself. But not all were ready. Not all wanted the truth.
Gilliman retreated into isolation, his loyalty to his father now a scar across time.
He had chosen both paths, embracing parts of the pattern, while entombing others beneath duty. He could not be emperor, nor could he be merely Primarch. So he became something else, a witness to history's second great sin. The Inquisition fractured into 1,000 civil wars. Some inquisitors vanished into the webway. Others burned entire sectors to contain what they called pattern plagues. Faith fought reason. Vision battled memory. The stars wept fire. And yet, in some corners of the galaxy, peace bloomed. Eldawi prophets, once silent, began to speak of the new weave. Necron overlords found in the pattern echoes of their lost souls. The curse of biotransference finally challenged. Tau scientists wept before pattern anomalies that contradicted their most sacred laws of logic. And the orcs, they didn't understand it, but they felt it, and that was enough to make them laugh louder than ever before. Terra changed. The golden throne, long seen as a prison, began to whisper, not madness, but memory. The Emperor, no longer just a withered corpse of psychic fire, reached into the pattern, and in doing so he saw her. She was not a god, nor a queen. She was the first mistake. The old one who had touched the infant mind of the child who would become the Emperor. She had given him the seed of dominion, the spark of design. But she had lied, not out of malice, but necessity. She had tried to give humanity a weapon. Instead, she had made them a threat to all creation. Now she waited beyond time, beyond reality, in the anti-pattern, in the wound beneath the pattern's light. And she spoke only to him. "You are the sum of my gamble," she said. "You tried to save them by control. But what if freedom was always the key?" The Emperor wept. For the first time in 10,000 years, not for humanity, but for himself, he saw now the path. Not as a god, nor as a tyrant, but as a teacher. He spoke to the galaxy, not in words, but through dreams, through pattern echoes, through choice. And the galaxy responded. Some rejected him, some embraced him, but no one could ignore him. The final battle was not fought on a battlefield. It was fought in memory, across infinite timelines, across divergent realities. The pattern spread. Every lie, every betrayal, every secret the Imperium had buried, surfaced. The Horus heresy was not forgotten, but re-understood, not as tragedy, but as a necessary fracture, a crucible from which awareness could be born. The Chaos Gods writhed. Their power, drawn from ignorance and emotion, began to twist. They were not slain, but they were changed. Khorne became not just wrath, but justice. Kinsinch, no longer mere change whispered of wisdom. Slaanesh danced at the edge of sensation, never consuming, only guiding. And Nurgle wept. He was never the god of decay. He was the god of acceptance. And acceptance, in the pattern, meant release. The warp shifted,
Not into peace.
but into balance. The eye of terror closed. In its place stood the spiral gate, a construct of mind and energy, where souls no longer burned, but learned. The galaxy did not become perfect. That was never the pattern's promise. Wars still raged. Empires still rose and fell. But now, for the first time in memory, there was context. There was choice. And above all, there was truth. The heir to the pattern stood one last time before the vault. It was no longer locked. Inside lay the final version, the completed map of reality as imagined by the old ones, corrected by mankind, and forged by every mistake ever made. He looked back once more at the stars and smiled. "We are no longer prisoners of the Emperor's first mistake," he whispered. "We are its redemption." And with that, he walked inside,